Peace. Today we're going to address officer, or deputy, should I say, sheriff's deputy Rick on TikTok. He seems to be relatively level-headed. There are certain problematic postings that he's made that if he was not a constitutional officer, I believe he would be removed. However, he made a few posts. This one right now in this particular moment is the one I'm going to speak upon. And in this particular post, he's going to say some particular things. I didn't listen to all of it, so some of it's going to be on first blush, and some of it will be sui generis. I'll be hearing it for the first time. Until that extent, I'll blind react to it. But to something that I've already heard, I'm not going to sit here and fake the funk to kick it.
This is a cute comment. It may...
By calling the comment cute, it's also condescending on your part, because we're in echo chambers, right? We're creating bubbles here on TikToks. So when you say this is a cute comment, and yours is a condescending comment, so we've already invited a disconnect in how we're choosing to dialogue with one another, which ultimately opens up the appropriate ground for miscommunication, misinterpretation, and a whole bunch of missing of a lot of things, except for the violence that he's a fan of.
Mean that, but cops act like they can do whatever they want.
It's not an act. That at that particular point, I disagree with the commenter. It's not an act. Cops move and function like they can do whatever they want. It's not an act. That is not like, if you mean act in the sense of doing a thing and moving, and in that particular sense of the word, I agree with you. But if you mean act as opposed to perpetrating a fraud, no, absolutely not. I do not agree with you. Cops do not act anything in this country. Both they and the legal justice system, so-called justice system in this country, both grant licensure to the police to do and behave as in whichever way tickles their fancy. And the courts, the Rehnquist court,
this motherfucker is dumb as shiznit.
And then the Roberts court after that,
this motherfucker is dumb as shiznit,
literally gutted all meaningful mechanisms to push back on them. We have qualified immunity on steroids now. Now let's show you how finite they go into the minutia when they say, it needs to be clearly established precedent. That's how qualified immunity works. And only in order to get a police officer or someone in government either not per se convicted, but let's just say sued effectively, you need to overcome several bars, but one bar in particular is indeed qualified immunity. And qualified immunity requires one primary thing. There are a whole bunch of lead-ups to it, elements to it, but the one primary thing it requires is that the action being brought to the court is not clearly established. Meaning the officer, this is how finite they go, the officer could shoot somebody, but because he punched somebody before he shot him, that right there is not clearly established that the officer couldn't punch him and then use the person's response to the aggression as a justifiable basis to extinguish life. That's how finite the courts go into it. That's how deep they're willing to split hairs in order to uphold white supremacy, because this is indeed white supremacy. But I digress. Let him keep building.
First off, I don't know what you're talking about. Bad people.
That's gaslighting.
Shitty people. Whether they wear a badge or not, they only do as much as they feel they can get away with.
And that's correct, but it obfuscates the point that, well, majority of those people that you're highlighting just so happen to be in law enforcement. That doesn't seem to be a coincidence to me. You have law enforcement that abide by the law and that will do the law correctly and appropriately. But for the most part, and I do say the most part, for the most part, no, the law enforcement is nepotism, racism, cowardice. It's not what it's supposed to be. It's not protect and serve. In fact, even the Supreme Court says it's not protect and serve. How ironic is that? That the highest court in the land alleged to uphold justice in this country, the acme of justice, is supposed to be meted out by that institution, and that same institution literally said that police do not have to serve and protect. As a matter of fact, the police have the sole discretion, individual discretion, policy be damned, to, in their individual observation of a scene, they have the sole discretion as to whether or not they're willing to even engage. A woman can be getting raped 2 feet away from them, screaming for her life, bloody murder, child right there in the carriage. The officer has the discretion as to whether or not he's willing to engage. Period. That's Supreme Court precedent. Now, state law may say an entirely different thing depending on the state you're in. But Supreme Court precedent, if you are the fool that tries to sue this man in Supreme Court, in federal court, where it can move up the chain more expeditiously and we don't have issues of comedy to be concerned with, issues of sovereign immunity to be concerned with as far as the state is concerned, and that thing makes it up to the Supreme Court, they're siding with the police officer. You can pretty much guarantee that. Because they have to side with them because they're the ones that wrote the president. Now, if they're willing to overturn the president in order to address the officer's condition, then they still can't address the officer. It has to be prospective because the officer has due process rights just as well as anyone else does. In the federal court, it will be under the Fifth Amendment. If you keep his ass in the states, it'll be under the 14th. But it still doesn't change the fact that he has those rights. And those rights require mainly that a person be placed on notice of a thing prior to there being some type of negative action to be taken against them, which is how they circle jerk and work that qualified immunity narrative. So it's not so much to say that the officer in question or any officer policing in America in question is one thing or the other. It's just to say, look at the end result. And you judge for yourself if all cops are bastards or if it's fuck 12. And I get it. Before he goes one step further, look, the citizens who are being oppressed by these people aren't necessarily willing to do what's necessary in order to stop their oppression. This country is founded on that very concept. And keep in mind, I don't know if a lot were paying attention over the summer of 2020, but if that does not lead you to any conclusion, it should lead you to the solid conclusion that when this country is torn to pieces, it will be torn to pieces because of police. Because that one killing dredged up a Herculean amount of disdain for policing in this country. First time in American history that a police station was burnt to the ground in the 21st century or the 20th, to my knowledge. I don't profess to be a historian. However, to my knowledge, limited as it may be, that hasn't happened. And to the extent that it hasn't happened in my lifetime. So for me, that was iconoclastic. And for the people who were there and who witnessed it and participated in it, it was revolutionary. And to have a body of people stoking that, yeah, it's predictable. I am not speaking prophetically. I'm speaking predictably. It's predictable that their actions and indifference to the citizenry will provoke a response that ultimately undoes this so-called democracy. That's a logical conclusion to arrive at. But what is indisputable as far as conclusions are concerned is look at the end result of policing. Look at the end result of policing. Don't take in the policies, don't take in the rules, don't take in nothing. Look at the end result of policing. And if we can compare apples to apples and orange to oranges and arrive at a conclusion that says the way that police in this country is just fine. There's nothing wrong with policing. If that is a median that we can all get upon and get behind and rest our sentiments behind, then I'll eat my words. But come on, man. We all know that's not the case. Even the people who are alleged benefactors of white supremacy and racism and prejudice and bigotry in this country, even they aren't stupid enough to go along with that shtick. So we are confronted with our realities. And I get it, to the point that I was raising earlier. We're not willing to fight back against them. So how can we expect them who actually live amongst us, who are actually our neighbors and our relatives and friends and associates and things of that nature? These are people we have to work by and with in certain respects. How can we expect them as citizens who are up close, shoulder to it? How can we, on any other day, they're not per se citizens, as the recent killing, the outing of the sociopaths, tangentially aligned to the killing of that woman, brown woman.
Rallying for respect, protests across the country this weekend after the release of new body camera video from the Seattle Police Department. It shows an officer laughing after a 23-year-old female immigrant was hit and killed by a police patrol car. The officer, who is white, also saying on tape that the woman's life had limited value.
Right? They're not per se citizens. They're citizens in the sense of saying that they live amongst us. So how can you anticipate them, who work around these people, who have actually seen people be murdered with these people that they call colleagues?
Sergeant is caught on camera putting his hands around the throat of a fellow officer.
Rosa also says while speaking to the suspect, the sergeant is seen holding his can of pepper spray but doesn't use it. That's when a nearby officer who was concerned with things escalating further intervened. You can see her running to police, grabbing him by his belt, pulling him backwards. He then turns and aggressively grabs her by the neck while pushing her backwards. Sergeant Police is then seen on video going back to the squad car, slams the door before pointing and yelling back at the officer who is trying to de-escalate the situation.
There you go. Who have actually sat by and watched paperwork be doctored, who have watched people attempt to out these people, and they themselves suffer the brunt of their superiors, which gets them demoted, which gets them fired, which gets them removed, and so on and so forth, down that particular rabbit hole. So it's not it is marginally, and I'm playing at the edges here, but I'm trying to be as fair as possible. It is marginally unfair to ask of them what we ourselves are not willing to do, right? However, I'm saying, again, I'm playing at the edges here because you're in the institution. You are in the institution of policing. They provide the apparatus of whistleblowers, and you're protected by laws and rules and regulations. And I get reprisals and retribution. The policing is the biggest gang in this country. So I get that part, but you can do it anonymously. You can intentionally let go a bunch of information behind closed doors and let it slip and out your superiors. And some of them have, but the ones who have, they're more often, they're doing it because of some type of wrong they endured. They were okay with other people enduring the wrong. It wasn't until the wrong was visited upon them that they all of a sudden found their selves being inspired by the injustices of this particular department that they've worked for the last 15, 20, 30, or whatever many years. Right? But again, I digress. Let's get back to my man here.
Okay. That's what any bad guy does. No bad guy goes out there acting out knowing that they're going to get caught. They get caught in spite of their ignorant confidence.
No, I don't agree with that. I do not agree with that. Police have body cams. They wear body cams. They have zero problem, as the murder of Tyree Nichols reveals and proves empirically. I say empirically, not anecdotically, because the fact of the matter is, when you look back on the history of policing in this country, you see that same type of behavior visited all throughout its functioning in this country. So it is 100% unjustifiable to allege that it can be anecdotal evidence by relying upon Tyree Nichols when Tyree Nichols is just another incidental consequence of a long history of us as citizens being indifferent to the viciousness of the policing apparatus here in this country. And these are all just facts. These are facts. Okay? So I hear him. And I understand in his profession, he needs to provide a particular amount of distance away from himself. And he needs, as a agent of this particular law enforcement policing apparatus in this country, he needs to also clean the imagery of it up. So, of course, you're going to come out and into the public and say nonsense like this, that people only do things when they think they can get away with it. Yes, that's the problem. That's the problem. The Supreme Court said they can get away with it. There is no court higher to take your grievances to. And they themselves said they have zero problem whatsoever with the policing nature in this country. Absolutely none. For every one right they give you, read Miranda v. Arizona, and then read the legionless amount of cases that came out in the wake of Miranda v. Arizona in an effort to undermine it. You're not about justice. And it's never been about justice. The Supreme Court's solitary responsibility is upholding white supremacy. That is its sole responsibility. And it doesn't matter if you can point at Ketanji Brown Jackson. I can point at the 5,000 or several thousand workers that worked for the government that protested against racial bias. And the government even admitted in those pleadings that, yes, we concede that we were being racially biased, and Ketanji Brown Jackson ruled against them. So don't point no Ketanji Brown Jackson at me as some type of rebuttal to the statement or to the assessment, because you're wrong and it's a fraudulent one. It's a fraudulent juxtaposition, absolutely fraudulent. Ketanji Brown Jackson is a black face in a high place. I don't care how many black churches she goes to and sing. It's no different than Kamala Harris doing it. Absolutely no different. It means absolutely nothing. It's symbolism to a people whose symbolism is all they have ever received from this particular government, which grinds its teeth on our oppression. So I hear this nigga, but he ain't saying shit.
Even bad cops, when their buddies are around, they follow the rules because they don't.
That's a lie. That's a lie. Again, I reiterate, you can run through the gamut of I don't know how many incidents in this country where the issue is not just shot up to the higher ups. There are legions right now on YouTube. There is a phenomenon, a niche called auditors. And then there's auditors who audit the auditors. And their entire role and responsibility is to audit the police and see if they are functionally aware of the Constitution that they allege they have a responsibility to uphold. And more often than not, those individuals reach out when they get met with one of these dogmen, with one of these race soldiers, with one of these state-sanctioned killers. When they get confronted with one of them, what ends up happening is, what do? I need to speak to your superior. Why? Because you are not in possession of the requisite level of intellect to engage me on this topic. And if you keep going further, you're going to put your law department, this particular policing department, in legal jeopardy. So get your superior on the horn. And then when the superior comes, he doubles down on the ignorance and stupidity. So this is a lie. And it's done while the camera is recording. They don't care. And it's done while the body cam is recording. They don't care. And it's done while witnesses are there. They don't care. And it's done, and they know that it's going to go into, or it has the potential to go into, higher hands as far as the media and legislators and so on and so forth. And guess what? They don't care. This man's points are pointless. This is the ramblings of a cognitively dissonant and disingenuous individual. You have a profession. That profession is how you take care of your family. Peace. Peace. Nobody's going to begrudge you for taking care of your family. But what I will say is, if you know you're taking care of your family, and you know in order to do that, you have to work side to side with killers and sociopaths, rapists and murderers, liars and document forgers. If you have to work alongside criminals, don't sit here and gaslight people who actually can see through the veneers, man. Don't sit here and come up with these fraudulent interpretations of reality because you guys are comfortable with alternative facts. Nah, don't do that, man. Be honest with yourself. Let the chips fall as they may be, but be sincere. Don't write a script. Don't have this whole thing in your head to where you think, oh, this is how I'm going to say it, and I'm going to freak it like that. No, be honest. And if you were honest, you wouldn't say a goddamn thing. You would just let it rock out. Man, dude left a comment on my shit. He's hitting me off. And to my point, look at the first comment over there. Look at Mr. Louis. What does Mr. Louis says? Mr. Louis said, at the police academy, the instructor said, quote, if you say stop resisting out loud, people around you will assume you're in the right, end quote. And then he said what? I quit the next week. I quit the next week. That was a good guy trying to be hired by a bad organization. And that is the most natural response to that reality. But yeah, the gaslighting continues.
Anyone seeing that they're breaking the rules. When the good guys aren't around and they're out by themselves, that's when they act out. That's when they do as much as they think they can get away with.
And we just addressed that, but I'm going to let him cook, man.
But that doesn't last forever. Inevitably, they are caught eventually.
It has lasted since this country's inception and since the inception of the Fugitive Slave Act in the 1800s and the slave catchers, which were an incidental consequence thereof.
And they get turned in, or they get dealt with. All right? There ain't nobody in this world running around doing whatever they want.
That's a lie. You have other countries in this planet who would beg to differ. Now, when he says there's nobody running around doing whatever they want, there's qualifiers to that. That's much like them saying slavery in this country is outlawed. There's a qualifier to that. There's what they call in law a but-for clause, an exception into that particular line of logic, right? And that exception is if you're black, if you're a person of color, if you're poor, if you're disenfranchised, color notwithstanding, then you are not going to run around here doing whatever the hell you want. Absolutely not. Not unless you have something that the dominant society wants and are willing to pay you to keep reproducing or to take the intellectual property rights thereof. Outside of those qualifiers, or unless you got a wicked jump shot, outside of those qualifiers, sorry to inform you, buddy, you ain't running around here doing what you want. But then tell that to the killer of Jordan Neely. Tell that to Donald Trump. 91 charges. He is going to do whatever the fuck he feels like in that political party he's affiliated with, very loosely, right? So I reiterate, ask Donald Trump. Ask George Bush, who picked a war against the will of not just Congress, but the fucking entire planet. Come on, man. You can tell that shit to somebody else who doesn't have 2 eyes, 2 ears, and the ability to comprehend.
People only do as much as they feel they can get away with.
And that right there, he concludes with, and that right there is the problem. Because white people have been doing whatever they feel like on this planet because they feel like they can get away with it. From policing bodies, policing hair, policing laughing, policing walking, policing talking, policing eating, policing driving, policing flying, policing sitting, policing traveling, everything thoroughly policed. Because they feel like they can. And I don't mean officially policing through ratification of laws, statutes, amendment, legislative processes, and so on and so forth. Absolutely not. I mean the Karens. I mean the Klan. I mean the unofficial enforcement arms of white supremacy. That's what I mean. So we have and this man is a police officer. This man has the right under the law of this country to pull over a person and invade that person's space and peace of mind, invade that person's journey, literally take a person's freedom away from him. And this is his particular frame of thought. Priceless. So I hear this nigga, but he ain't saying shit.